Good. Yeah. The first talk in the next session will be given by Aravind, Rishi, Rahul Krishnan, and Apu, who are representing the combining efforts and experiences of various organizations, StM Docks, StM Soft, and Trivic, and are going to talk about how they handle this pandemic as entities running their businesses using LaTeX. The key focus will be on pandemic operations as well as operational efficiency using an in-house data-driven performance evaluation called a PIDX. StM Docks has been using LaTeX and Friends for the last 25 years, and each year are very happy to be institutional members of TUG. And with that said, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ross. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. So this is the second time that we are again presenting during this state of a pandemic. So last year we did the same thing, and now we are again doing it. So without any more delay, let's move on to our presentation. So this presentation is not like the general technical presentations that you would normally hear. This time around, it's slightly different because we are in a kind of a difficult phase wherein every day we are finding it really difficult to work. Our lives are at stake, the lives of our family members are at stake, and the situation is quite difficult now. So this time around, we thought through it, and we were thinking like, why don't we present something related to how a modern, in a sense, a company has lived through a modern day pandemic. Because in the future, maybe all of these things might get archived, and this information that we pass on from this generation to the next and to the next and so on. So this would actually be there as a record in history, and people would be able to understand that there were these sort of companies, there were these sort of people who have handled a pandemic, like what we were read through literature and so on related to the Spanish flu. So let's move on to our presentation. So welcome everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to present. So let me just brief you about what StM Docks or the entire entity as the promoters have actually created. So there are three brothers called as CVR brothers. So one is CV Radhakrishnan, which most of the people in the tech community know. Then there's CV Rajendran, and then CV Rajagopal. These three brothers together in 1994 created an entity called as River Valley Technologies. So the entire core idea of that entity was to help create academicians to create articles in the sense that they are mostly their doctoral work related to theses. Okay, so from then later on, it's been 25 years. So in the last 25 years, we have been working on complex journal typesetting using LaTeX as the engine for all of the work that we do. So we have production units in Trivandrum, Kerala, Trivandrum, which is in Kerala, as well as in a different part of Kerala, also called as Kozhikode. And then a location in Tamil Nadu, like it's called Trichy. So in addition to that, we have our design and development consultants who are located in Europe. So they work through an entity called a Trivic SRO. So that's a new entity that we have created. And we are very happy that we have been able to work with the best minds in the world, like Handethan, who works with us through this entity called as Trivic SRO. So the other two entities that I've not talked about, so I talked about River Valley Technologies. Then there's something called a Sayana Foundation. So Sayana Foundation is a non-profit organization. The key aim of Sayana Foundation is primarily to digitize the Malayalam literature, which are in the sense the copyrights of literature that have ended. The whole core idea for us is to digitize that. So Malayalam is a language which is spoken in the southern state of Kerala, which is which you could say constitutes 3% of the population of India. So 30 million people live in the southern state of Kerala. So we have quite a lot of literature, but none of those things are being digitized. And as time moves on, all of that will be lost. So the core ideals behind which Sayana Foundation works is to make sure all of that works gets digitized. The other two entities are StM Document Engineering, which is predominantly into document typesetting. And then StM Software Engineering, which is predominantly focuses more on consulting and technology, wherein it creates products and also provides services to various customers world over. So this slide just gives you an idea about what we do. So generally, from all of the authors, what we receive are the author source files. Mostly they would be in a format of TeX or LaTeX or doc. What we do is the engine that we use in our production is always LaTeX. So we convert even doc files into a LaTeX format, and from there we start the entire process. So this is just to give you an idea, and the pictures that you see on the right are from our campus here in Trivandrum. So we have a very environment-friendly campus, and those pictures are all shot by some of the staff who work at the campus itself. Yeah, so let's move on to the next one. So about our experience in LaTeX, like what I was talking about earlier, we have been working for the last 25 years with LaTeX and Friends, and CV Radhakrishnan, Rajagopal, even Rishi, Apu, all of them would have actually contacted you, and Rishi usually attends all these conferences. So CVR is no longer able to attend these conferences in person, so he would be attending all these things virtually, whereas Rishi has been going around the world attending conferences. If not for the pandemic, both of us would have been there in person meeting all of you. So maybe next year or so on, we could actually think of something like a meet in person, and we look forward to a point in time where TUG is able to host physical conferences. So we are the people who created the TUG Users Group India in 1998. So this was inaugurated by Sebastian Rutz. And we also created the Free Software Foundation in 2001 in India. So we are the first people who started the open source revolution, as well as taking universities to start using LaTeX and so. So we do a lot of work in LaTeX. So we have developed class files. Those are all uploaded into C10 for others. Then we work with the various customers who are there in the industry, mostly publishing customers. So wherein authors interface with these publishing houses, and from the publishing houses, they pass on the typesetting work to us. And the typesetting work is being done through the entities that I spoke about earlier. So we have already organized TUG Users Group conferences here in India. So we also would like to actually host numerous other conferences in the coming future also for TUG, so that all of you will be able to visit India and see this place again. So in addition to that, we try to promote the usage of LaTeX in various universities. And we have been providing support for Elsevier authors for the last 15 years. In addition to that, we also create products and services using LaTeX technologies, and some of those products were already presented through various other conferences in the last the years that had passed. So that's what we do. And then in addition to that, like I spoke about, the picture that you see here on the bottom half, you see the developers who are working with us. So they form the Trivik unit, which works from the Czech Republic. So you would all be knowing Handathan. So he works with us. So that's actually a proud moment, is what we could say, that he is able to work with us. Yeah. So now let's move on to the crux of our entire presentations and what we want to discuss. So we all know that we are in a state of a pandemic where things are not really going to plan as how we would have wanted it to be. Like we are not able to meet our family members. We are locked down in a state. We are not allowed to go out of our house. We are not allowed to go meet colleagues. We are not able to work from our offices. So all of this has changed the entire scenario in which how business operates, as well as all of our lives. So this gives you an idea as to our preparations to live and work in a COVID-19 environment. So this could be actually categorized into 3 phases, where we have the pre, present, and post. So we already are in the pre as well as in the present case related to COVID. We do not see any signs of it abating and moving on to the post phase. So there were signs that vaccines may be able to help to a great deal, and they are helping. But the amount of time it takes for vaccines to be sent all over the world and all nations to get vaccinated, it's a slow process. And we could see that the COVID situation is going to stretch on for the next 1 or 2 years, and for things to move back to normal, it's going to take time. So this slide just gives you an idea as to what happened in India and what were the real challenges that we had to face. So we on January 30th, that is, we are from the state of Kerala, which is a southern state in India. So we were the first ones to have the first case of COVID reported in India. And then in February 3rd, we had 3 cases being reported in Kerala. And today, as we stand somewhere around close to August 4th of 2021, we have around 3 million cases in Kerala, whereas the case count in India is much more. And as you can see, day on day, close to 15,000 cases are being added on a daily basis, and the test positivity, even close to 100,000 tests are being conducted, are close to 10%. So we could see that the situation of COVID has not gone away. We are still in a state of flux, wherein we are having lockdowns after lockdowns. So this gives you an idea as to what we really did. So initially, at the start of the pandemic phase in India, so this was declared as a pandemic sometime in March, even before sometime in April. So even before that, sometime in February itself, we started looking to the seriousness of what COVID could do, and we had a lot of internal meetings deciding what to do. We didn't want employees to come to office and get into a state where they could be infected with COVID and then start reinfecting others. So that sort of a situation was dangerous, wherein we are a small unit of around 130, and we didn't want all of our employees to fall sick, and then this carries forward to their homes, and then people in their families get affected, because the population density in Kerala is quite high than what you consider with the other states in India. So the risk of the pandemic going, or the disease going out of control, was very serious. And we wanted to make sure that this did not affect our operations as such. So why is our operations important is because we work with the publishing houses. So the authors who write articles, then publish through journals. Until and unless this work gets completed quickly, these don't go into press, and then the world does not get to read them. So in that aspect, our work is important for the world. And in the other aspect, until and unless we have a business, we would not be able to help our employees who are our strength. So we will not be able to pay their salaries. We will not be able to do a lot of things for them. And as a result of that, affects the entire family, as well as indirectly, at the end of the day, it will also impact the economy. So we wanted to make sure a kind of status quo is maintained, wherein we take necessary precautions, also try and make sure that that does not affect the employees' well-being as well as our operations. So how we handle this, what we will be discussing in the subsequent slides. So if you take, for example, the idea of India, so India was one of the first nations which went in ahead with the proactive lockdown, a complete lockdown within the entire country. I don't think if you go back in history, you will ever be able to see some sort of a lockdown in this scale. And this was considered as one of the most strictest lockdown the world could ever see. And nothing worked. Almost all of the companies had to shut down, operations were shut down. There were mass migration of people wage laborers who were living in the cities and working. They had to move back to their homes because their livelihoods were not being met. They didn't have any money in their hands. So all of these were trying times even for us. And with all of this, how we managed it is what we want to present. So what we did is we had a lot of meetings with our staff trying to explain the seriousness of this disease and why the WHO, as well as the state governments and the government of India, why they considered this to be a dangerous situation and why necessary care has to be taken for this. So those sort of awareness campaigns were run across a day in and numerous number of days. These sessions were done. Then we moved on to a phase where employees would be attending office, but we didn't want all of them to attend office. So whoever was using public transport were all asked to go on leave, because we didn't want to put them into difficulty where they have to travel in a situation in a bus or a train or something like that, where the disease could easily spread from unknown persons. So we stopped all of that, and then we started a campaign called as Keep Lights campaign within the office, trying to break the chain. So we put in place a lot of practices, like anybody who came to office had to undergo a temperature check. They had to wash their hands. We had facilities provided for them even before they entered the office itself. They could wash their hands. They were given masks, sanitizers. The usage of masks was implemented from the start itself. And almost all of the people who didn't have to come to office were asked to be on leave itself. So we handled our operations with limited staff, even when the entire lockdown process completely disrupted the entire world as well as India. So how we did is we moved in our entire office or our operations from a physical way of working, because even before this we didn't have the experience of completely working from the cloud. So we all were coming to the office. Anybody had a problem, they could reach out to the next person, talk to them, handle all those things. So this sort of a new working environment was completely different. So we had to create virtual environments using Google Meet, how we moved our physical presence from an office environment to a virtual environment. So all of that was handled. So with this and the kind of things that had to be done very quickly, because the national lockdown was announced. Even before the lockdown, we started planning, because when you go into a lockdown, you will not be able to procure the necessities that you need for running the operations, like the computer systems, the broadband connections, then the wireless dongles, UPSs, headsets. So we started all of that slightly ahead in time, even before a scenario of a lockdown could come into place. So we started that sometime in February end itself and started procuring new systems for all of our employees. We thought that this sort of a scenario of a lockdown would occur, and we make sure that the physical infrastructure was put in place so that everybody could work from their homes. So that actually gave us, in the sense, our time to market, or something that you could call, the speed in which we did this was quite amazing. So by April 11th, almost all of the staff of the company was able to work from home independently. They were all sitting in their homes and completely working as they would normally do from office. So that was done in a span of around close to 1 month. So in between all of this, the kind of experiences that we learned beforehand from the previous years and so on is something that helped us. Like, for example, the state of Kerala has a lot of strikes which usually disrupt people from going to offices and work. So that gave us the head start, wherein we were already planning how we could set up work from home for our employees, so that they can seamlessly work from home without actually coming to office. So initially that was done on a limited scale, where only 10% of the employees had access to a work from home environment. But once the pandemic hit us, we moved from 10% to close to 90% within a few days itself. So that was quite amazing. So even today, as we speak, we are in a state of lockdown, wherein the first wave happened, and now we have the second wave across India with spreading havoc, and people are saying that there may be a chance of a third wave in India. But in terms of Kerala, the government, or how statisticians and scientists have looked at it, they are saying that we are now in a state of fifth phase of COVID, and the lockdowns after lockdowns are completely disrupting the economy as well as people's lives. So as we stand, sometime in June 1st, again the next lockdown was announced, and we are continuing to be in a state of lockdown as we speak. So with all of this, how we see COVID continuing is because in the next few years also, the vaccination rates will only hit close to 60 or 70%, and ending this pandemic will not be easy. So our organization has also taken a decision to move completely from a model of physical working from office to a mixed mode of office, wherein even after the end of the pandemic, we would still have only 33% of the staff working from office. So we have moved our operations to a permanent work from home model, so wherein people could opt to work from home or from office, or a mixed mode of operations wherein for some amount of time they come to office and some amount of time they work from home. So this is the model that we have evolved. So from the pre to the present to the post, that is how we are moving forward. So this explains about the various things that we had to do to actually instill confidence with the clients that we are able to operate from an environment of working from home. What are the various things that we did? So on the left, you would see a map of India. So that's the India is a union of states, and across all of them, the southern half, you will be able to see Kerala. So that's where we predominantly operate from. And the map of Kerala divided into the various subunits or districts or counties is how you could put it. And we have now, before the pandemic hit us, our employees were only working from two places within Kerala. One was in Trivandrum and the other was in Calicut. Now, after the pandemic, or after the pandemic hit us, we are now spread across the state of Kerala. We have people working from all of their homes and from various districts across Kerala, as well as some places even farther from Kerala to like Tamil Nadu, and even from Bangalore, which is in Karnataka. So having all of these people working from all of these different locations is quite a challenge, because we are a production house, and the kind of the deliveries that we had to do vary from delivering LaTeX files which come from others within 24 hours to within 3 days. So that's the kind of SLAs that we have to maintain. So the amount of work that goes into producing these deliverables are quite high, and some of this work, most of this work has to be done by numerous number of people and not just one or two individuals. So as a result of this, cross coordination between employees is always a very difficult affair that you can handle, and something that you can easily do when everybody is sitting within one place or one physical location. But how do you do that with something like LaTeX when everybody is sitting in different places? How do you handle support? How do you make sure that files compile properly, you get the deliverables, you maintain quality, you send things on time, you can make sure that you are able to meet the productivity figures that you generally see when people are working from an office? All of this has been quite challenging, but over the last 1 year through the pandemic, we have been able to do this seamlessly without any sort of effort at all. So if you could see some of our production performances are on due delivery, we have met 100%. This is not what we say, this is what our clients say. So they have said that on due is being met 100%, quality KPIs are being met close to 100%. And customer feedbacks have been very next to negligible. So the kind of one that you would see as a customer feedback, if you go back and think about it, meeting that sort of a level of efficiency in terms of making sure quality is addressed is not something very easy when you have very specific authors who are quite interested in the aesthetic sense of a LaTeX document. So that is a big challenge that we have been able to meet over this difficult phase. So our systems are always available. Then the manpower, how you maintain across locations is again critical. So generally the figures that we used to have, say if there are 100 employees, only 85 of them would turn up for office, even when we are physically working from the physical presence of an office. But when we moved into a virtual environment, absenteeism really increases. So even with the kind of absenteeism that you would see when people are working from home, we are able to maintain our manpower figures as you would see when people are working from office itself. So that's kind of a thing that we have been able to do. And in terms of performance indexes of how we evaluate the performance of employees. So what happens is when people are working from home, the key differentiator from working from office and home would be when you're working from an office, it's quite easy to ensure performance because you're required to be at a desk, you're required to work, you're required to complete the amount of work within the fixed time. So all of that is easier. But when people are working from remote locations, all of that monitoring is no longer possible. So how do you ensure this monitoring is in place is something that we have done through a system called as PIDX. So our analytics team has been working tirelessly to ensure that this gets done without any sort of problems. And we have created this sort of a system called as PIDX, which works with the analytics team and then produces all these performance index figures automatically from the various LaTeX files that the operators are working on. So that's something that we have done. Then in terms of handling our business continuity of getting people vaccinated, so we have hit 100% of vaccinations. That's we have been conducting vaccine drives to ensure that vaccination of all of our employees is done on time. If you look at the vaccination status in the state is at 41%, but when it comes to our employees, we have hit 100% for the first dose, and we are close to 17% for the second dose. Even the state averages are at around 17% for the second dose. But in terms of the first dose, we have hit 100%. So that's something that is an achievement that we could call. Then the other thing is generally when people are working from home, what happens is people are required to work more than what they are required to work from office, because there are the kind of efficiencies that you could maintain from home is quite different from what you could maintain from an office. But in our case, we have been able to improve our efficiencies quite by a huge margin. And when there was less work coming to us, we were able to reduce our work times. And that's something that is something that we have been able to do. In addition to that, we have created a system called as variable timing, wherein breaks are allowed more than what you would find when you're working from office. So this is quite important because people are working from homes, and mostly all of our employees are female employees, and what happens is they will have more responsibilities that they need to take care, and when everybody is at home, that becomes a challenge because the entire family is at home, and for a woman employee doing all of those things becomes quite difficult. But so the kind of additional breaks that we have been providing really helps. In addition to that, sleep becomes a very important factor when it comes to people working from home. So they are not able to maintain a required sleep balance. So we have been stressing and also mandating that no employees turns up to work in case if they have not slept for 8 hours. Like for example, if somebody is working late into the night, then we make sure that they don't come to work before completing an 8-hour interval. So that's something that we are proud we could say that we have been able to do. So these are the kind of things, and in terms of the kind of work for the community that we have been doing. So we have been digitizing literature so that it's available for the future generations through our entity called as Sayana. And the other model that really helped us overcome this pandemic is our idea or philosophy of community is the company. So all of our operators or all of our employees are mostly hired from the local community. So that has really helped us because having the workforce working closer to office. So when you have major disruptions like this, they don't have to move back or relocate back to their homes, which are in a farther off place, like the kind of cross migration which happened in most states like Delhi or Mumbai. That sort of a scenario is something that we have been able to avoid. And I think with this, we will move on to the next one. Yeah. So this just talks about the highlights, and the graphs that you see talks about the disruption in work which really happened across our 3 locations, Kozhikode, Trichy, and Calicut. So you could see in the initial phase of the pandemic, which started in January from sometime around March, there was disruptions across two of the offices, which is Trichy and Kozhikode, where nobody was able to work. Whereas the office in Trivandrum was able to partially work because of our involvement in getting work from home set up for them ahead in time. So that really helped. So post April, you could see the graphs have all stabilized. So that's the amount of number of employees who are working from all of the locations. You would see a steady graph, and the other graphs show you the productivity figures. So this is a proof that we have been able to make sure that our production runs seamlessly and we are able to keep delivering our deliverables on time. And on the other front is what we could talk about, the Neptune other feedbacks that we have got, the services that we provide for our customers. So our customers are quite happy. Even in this state of pandemic, we have been able to support them. So some of the feedback is provided over here. You could look at it. And the other key aspect that we implemented in our production is something called as a complex shift management system. So instead of forcing employees to work in multiple shifts, we actually split our shift system into a complex shift system wherein it's split across two different time zones. So one within the first time zone and the next within the second time zone of the day. So what happens is we give them breaks in between. So we give them 3 to 4 hours of break in between. So anybody who wants to work early could work, then take a break in the middle, and then again work towards the end of the day. So this sort of a model has helped us spread our work instead of having to create a system of having shifts where everybody works continuously one shift after the other. So with the same kind of workforce, we have been able to create a model in which we derive some sort of a productivity of having a 2-shift system. So that's something that is unique to us or a LaTeX company. So we will move on to the next one. So this talks about the multivariate strategies in journal production. So when you talk about the multivariate strategies in journal production, we use the XML first or the LaTeX first strategy in terms of generating other deliverables. So XML first, or even when if it is LaTeX first, even in these cases, we use we convert the input that we receive, if it is a doc or a text, to a LaTeX, and from the LaTeX we generate an XML, and from there it starts delivering, generating all of the other deliverables. Then that's what is called as LaTeX first in our case. And if it is a LaTeX file that you have, and from the LaTeX file you produce the PDF directly, and then from the LaTeX if you produce the XML, that's what you call as LaTeX first. So in both of these cases, our PIDX system is able to work, or PIDX or our performance evaluation system is able to work. It does profiling of the LaTeX files and produces certain metrics. So this is something that will be addressed by Apu and Rishi, who will be able to explain this to you as to how they have done it and why it's a critical part of our entire production monitoring and the production workflow. Because until and unless you are able to monitor the performance of employees who are working from home, so you will not be able to run a production floor properly. So we have actually eliminated the need for manual monitoring, in the sense manual allocation of work, as well as manually trying to see what is the kind of performance that a person outputs. So that sort of a thing has been completely eliminated, and we have gone to a zero-touch system where people don't have to take decisions based on their own thought process, whereas the data-driven model decides how performance needs to be evaluated. So I think I'll now hand over to Apu and Rishi, who will take you through the subsequent slides.
Aravind, it's actually Rahul who will be talking about more about PIDX.
Yeah.
Hello, Aravind?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. So I'll go on to the next slide. Go ahead, Rahul.
So let me introduce myself. I'm Rahul Krishnan, and I'm working in StM software engineering for past 9 years, and I'm working in LaTeX development. And today I'm going to talk about the performance index system, which we call as a PIDX. So we process text and we deliver the digital versions in PDF and XML formats. To generate this PDF and XML, we use LaTeX. Then we receive the source text from the publishers, and the publisher receive the source text from the researchers in various formats. The main formats are TeX and doc. Doc means the word format. Then the whole workflow is driven by a combination of a machine and human driven process. So as you can see here, our workflow is author source to LaTeX. Whether it is TeX or doc, we will convert it to TeX. If the author provided a Word document, we'll convert it to the LaTeX format and then process the text. Then the second one is enrich and restructure, which we used to call as ER, which will done the TeX files done in the TeX file to generate proper XML and PDF. And then we generate the author proof. Then this then sent to the author, and the corrections will be given by the authors, and then make the final delivery. And as I said before, these workflows were driven by the machine and human, and the human effort should be evaluated by accounting a multiple parameters instead of a single parameter. So the generalized formula is U is equal to D plus the sum of the product of the parameters and its benchmarks. So let me explain the equation, where the N represent the number of parameters, the P represent the parameters, B represent the benchmark of corresponding parameters, and the D represent the default unit. For each process, there will be a mandatory checklist to finish the same, which will consume certain amount of time. Hence, we add this extra D as an extra weightage to the operator. Now, Aravind, can you move to, yeah, thank you. So as I said before, the main process in our workflow is ER, which is enrich and restructure, which involves the TeX. So suppose a TeX file A generate 10 pages in 2 hours for ER, and another TeX file B generates 50 pages in 2 hours. Hence, the complexity force the extended time in completion of A. So if we insist a staffer to process 50 pages in 2 hours, we will unrealistically conclude that the staffer who did the A is inefficient. So to fix this scenario, we have derived 10 parameters to find the complexity of a TeX document from our 25 years of experience in text processing, which we called as a TeX LaTeX profiler. So let me explain the 10 indicators. So the first one is tag density. So the tag density is meant for the count of the items in a LaTeX source. That means a LaTeX source contain sections, equations, theorem environments, tables, figures, etc. So we have added a hook in each of these commands and environments, and on compiling this TeX file, it will generate a document contains the count of each and every commands. Summing up the whole, we will get a huge number. So increase in number means that document requires extra time for processing. Suppose the a document contain 10 equations, 10 sections, and 10 figures. The total number will be 30. Now the second one is diff count. Diff count means in the past we were forced to originate the source from the source from source. Where yes, we are originating the source, which the data received from the author. Now, now we are not originating it. Authors were providing the text files, and we were enriching it. To know how much enrichment were done by the operator, we just take the diff count that will summarize the data. Then comes the diff size of the text files. So difference between the size of the text files will give us a insight to how much amount of work is done in the text file. Then comes the PDF pages, then the PDF size and XML size, which we supposed to be in account that the PDF size and XML size will give us the amount of time to compile the text file. The next one is source, the text and word processor. So if the source is doc files, we need to convert into text file. Not all the documents were properly converted into the text files, so it needs more attention to create the proper XML and PDF. So next one is single and multiple column environments. Then comes with the normal and fast track. Then the next one is word count. Some stages like language editing, the staffers need to read the whole article, so that need to be count using the word count. So that's all from my side in these 2 slides, and I'm handovering the technical issues and technical documentation from the Apu. Apu?
Thanks, Rahul. Okay, and now I am Apu, and I've been working in StM Docks for 10 years as tech programmer. Now let's look at the role LaTeX played in the performance evaluation system. The key parameter in our performance evaluation system is the tag density. A tag is the generic term we use to describe a LaTeX command, environment, or placement specifier in floats or tables. Accurate count of these tags is the very important thing for analytical algorithm used for PDX calculation. 2 years ago, when we started the PIDX project, taking tag density count was a major challenge we faced. Our first instinct was to use other programming languages like Python or Ruby and count these tags in a post-LaTeX processing stage. But the LaTeX authors are known to use custom definitions in their manuscripts. For example, an author could redefine the Equinary environment to BE and EE commands and use them in the manuscript. In those cases, a non-LaTeX based processing scheme will not be able to count these tags properly. So we concluded that only a scheme using LaTeX could sincerely count the tag density. First, we categorize the tag types into main categories like front matter, body, cross references, floats, and tail part, and other miscellaneous items. Subcategories were determined in each of these main categories. To hold this categorical structure, we need a list-like construct in LaTeX. L3 programming layer, EXPL3, provides a lot of enhancements to the programming backend of LaTeX. Property lists are a convenient way to hold our tag category list. Each category can be uniquely identified using the key of the property list. Using property lists makes addition or removal of categories very convenient in our case. Once we created our category list, it was time to hook tag counting macros to LaTeX commands. At that time, when we were developing this PIDX system, eToolbox package provided the most convenient way to patch or add code to LaTeX commands for environments. The macro uses the keys of the property list to identify the category of the tag and append the count of tags to a C list. Using L3 programming layer and eToolbox, we created a PIDX profiler LaTeX package that keeps a list of tag categories and hooks them into a command and environment specified in the category list, which counts the tags density real time during tech compilation. We are now exploring the possibilities of using the new LT hooks package instead of eToolbox with our PIDX profiler package. At the end of the document, we write this tag count C list in an XML format using text write mechanism. The XML format helps in achieving the processing of tag density data for later analytics. Thus, we are able to use LaTeX to accurately calculate the tag density without the use of other programming languages and a processing system. This was a very satisfying experience for us to use LaTeX to achieve this profiling scheme. The LaTeX-based performance evaluation system, PIDX, uses system along with our analytics process helps us to move to a completely data-driven model of operations. And this has been helping us to meet various production challenges faced during this pandemic. Today, as we stand, we have moved to an automated work allocation and performance analysis system, which ensures work from home a success. In this slide, you can see an example of our PIDX XML, which lists the tag counts, its description, as in a structured XML format. And on the right side, you can see an HTML representation of this XML, which is very convenient for readers to look at. So this concludes the technical and very broad technical overview of the PIDX system.
So this entire exercise of actually creating this sort of a profiler system has been going on for quite some time. And so maybe in the future course of time or something, we may come up with this sort of a service. So where a profiler could be provided, wherein the complexity of LaTeX documents or the LaTeX inputs can be determined using a tool like this. So this tool has been quite critical for our operations, because when people are at home, we have no way of knowing how much work they are doing. So for a production house to work properly, so this tool really helps. And our analytic processes aligns with the kind of performance data that this generates. And then it says how the amount of work output that has been produced by an operator. So that's the overall idea of it. So this exercise of moving from a non-data driven model to a data driven model has taken us close to 2 years. So it initially started off with a manual process where all of this kind of data was being tabulated in sheets of basic sheets of Excel sheets and so on. But now today we have moved to a system where all of this performance data evaluation is completely automated. And we have also created a system of validation. So depending on the various complex stages of work, validation points are being awarded to individual operators depending on the areas that they work on. And then the kind of performance data that is generated for the kind of work that they do, all of that summed together will produce an index which says how much or where they stand in terms of how they are actually carrying out their work. So with this, the kind of performance pace and all of that has been automatically been calculated. And then today, as we stand, our decision making in terms of allocating work to all of these employees is completely automated. So we could actually say that we are in a position where we move to a model where people can work from home, even if they are not at office, can completely independently work from home. Like a cloud model of a cloud office model is something that we are able to simulate by having this PIDX system working underneath and then generating the required data. So that is maybe the tech community may find more interest in how this sort of a thing is being done. So with this, we will all conclude and we can end this. Thank you. So if there are any questions, we could take them.
Thank you very much. we can take a few minutes for questions. Any questions at all? Well, if there are no questions, thank you very much for your talk. Very interesting. I'm even tempted to have my own employer adopt it to organize our remote work better. If I can convince them to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you please
Yeah.
stop sharing your screen? Otherwise, we can't show the next video.